Hey everyone, this is Joe Zieja, and you're listening to the Kasanova Podcast.
All right, and welcome everyone to another episode of Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast. I'm your host, Mekel Kasanova, and I'm coming at you with another phenomenal interview. And in today's episode, I've got the true honor of having a Hawaii exclusive interview with the one, the only Joe Zieja. Now, Joe Zieja is a phenomenal voice actor, and you'll be very, very familiar with him because if you play Fire Emblem 3 Houses, you know who he is. I mean, there's really no question about it. This man who voiced Claude from The Golden Deer. Like, come on now, that's friggin' phenomenal. We've got Claude on the show, and there are other characters that Joe has voiced as well, such as McCloud from Star Fox, as well as Kurt Vander in the upcoming Trails of Cold Steel 3. Now, if you're ready to do it, I'm ready to do it, and I'm incredibly nervous, but let's go ahead and welcome Joe Zieja onto the show. All right, and welcome everyone to another episode of Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast. I'm your host, Mekel Kasanova, coming at you with another phenomenal interview. And today I have with me the one, the only Joe Zieja. Joe Zieja is the voice actor for Claude in Fire Emblem 3 Houses. Joe, go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Joe Zieja, pretty much anywhere on social media, at JoeZieja. That's pretty much everywhere. Not many Joe Ziejas running around. I'm a voice actor and I'm an author here in Los Angeles. I'm an Air Force veteran, and I guess that pretty much sums it up. I guess the reason you contacted me is because I'm the voice of Claude in Fire Emblem 3 Houses.
I mean, you're also the voice of Star Fox McCloud. It's Fox McCloud as well, so it's
too. Fox McCloud's cool too.
But yeah, man, thank you for your service. I greatly appreciate
Absolutely.
the service you did for the country. And with that being said, man, let's give a brief background on yourself, like some of the things that you are into, how you got into acting, voice acting.
Sure, what do you want to know?
Several books, and it's amazing. Let's go ahead and talk about your book series.
So writing was interesting for me. In my career in the military, I always thought, and then the government service part afterwards, I always thought that writing was going to be the artistic endeavor that kicked me out of the corporate world, because I knew that I really didn't want to make a career out of being in an office 9 to 5. And I always thought writing was going to be the thing to do it, because I'd been writing since I was, 17, my whole life, really. It was funny. I sold my first book in 2014, I think is when I signed the contract for Mechanical Failure. Now, the Epic Failure trilogy is the trilogy that I'm currently in the middle of, and it's essentially a story very loosely based on my experiences in the Air Force. And it's about a ex-sergeant who gets redrafted in the military and tries to avoid doing any real work at all costs. Wow. And it doesn't work out well for him. And that's just kind of how it goes. It's military humor, science fiction a la Catch-22 in space. Some of my reviewers said they compared it to A Hitchhiker's Guide or Terry Pratchett in Space is the cover quote on the second book. So yeah, the third book comes out in less than a month now. I think it comes out September 21st. I just got my first box of author copies of it like 20 minutes ago. So yeah, that's where it is right now.
Oh, awesome, man. Awesome. It's that in itself, like being an author, like that's one of the things, like,
great.
Walk us through this process. Like, what was it like for you? Like, what were some of the struggles or the hardships that you came through when you were trying to, or even the triumphs as a author? Like, did you have to do a lot of rewrites or redrafts or anything like that?
So the process is usually like I write a draft, then I go back and I do one revision without any feedback. Like I'll go back and I'll check myself and be like, okay, I like this, I don't like this, I'll make changes. I tend to write with a good plan, so I don't usually make any sweeping big changes. Then I send it to my agent. My agent takes a look at it. usually comes back with feedback, and I do another draft. Now, when I say I do another draft, I don't start from zero and write all the words again. I mean, I edit the draft. Then usually he's like, okay, this is great. Then we send it to my editor at Simon & Schuster, and he does a pass, and that's usually it. So I usually like 3 or 4 drafts. And every writer has their own thing. I know some people who write sort of they write from the hip without a plan. They'll do like 16 drafts of a novel. I prefer to keep it as low as possible because writing takes a long time.
Yeah,
and it's hard.
Well, I mean, hey, that's just it's amazing that you're able to do that, because I mean it's a skill set that I feel like not many people are able to hone and do well. And
yeah, I have one book that I'm, it's always good to be working on a project at any given time. Voiceover has really kind of taken over my world for the most part, so it's been hard to keep up a consistent writing schedule. But I am working on a novel right now, and then I have 2 kind of I'm in talks with 2 different companies about some other novels that I may or may not write. It's all up in the air, but I am in the middle of a draft of another novel right now. Well, it's also an audiobook. A lot of people are excited because they want Claude to read them a book, and so I do my own audiobooks.
Oh man, awesome. So when it comes to when you do your audiobook versions of the books you've written, do you have to do a lot of editing on your own, or like can you walk us through the process of that?
I edit on the fly. Well, actually, that's not true. I mark spots where I make mistakes using like a noise clicker, and then I send all my stuff over to an editor. So I have someone take care of all the post-production for my novels, just because like it's such a long, it's like 13 hours of recording, and it's quite a slog. That's actually why I stopped doing audiobooks, except mine, just because they take up such an incredible amount of time.
That's really amazing, man. I'm really inspired by the fact that you're able to do that, because like for me right now, I'm actually going through the process where I'm about to pursue podcasting full time, and doing editing and doing video editing for the video version of the podcast as well as the audio version, also doing YouTube videos and maintaining streaming. Like this is going to become my full-time workload. So when you say like you went through the process of not wanting to do the 9-to-5 corporate Joe or corporate America type of work, I feel that. I resonate with that, because I'm also in that same boat where I'm at that point of not wanting to deal with it either. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, that's exciting.
So one of the things I definitely want to ask you though is, at what point was it that you realized that this is something you want to pursue full time? Voice acting, doing the novelizations. Like at what point were you confident and you just knew without a shadow of a doubt that this was the path that you wanted?
So for me, it was all about numbers. I'm a father of 2. I have a wife, and have always been the only breadwinner of the family. So it was important to me to understand that I have something stable that's going to last. So I really had to wait until I was essentially out earning my day job for a significant period of time. What I did, and usually like when I recommend to people who are trying to build careers, is like you gotta suck it up for a while. I worked 16-hour days. I would work 8 hours at the government, and then I would come home and I would work voiceover and just grind and grind and grind for about a year. I was lucky in that I got a lot of great windfalls very quickly, but I really sort of made sure to build up that career before I even ever thought about leaving. I don't think I left. It was 8 months before I went part-time, and then another 8 months before I eventually quit completely. It was just a numbers game. I was like, okay, this is what I'm making at the government. This is what I'm making in VO. This is what I'm projecting. Like, it's not going down. I had some people that were kind enough to kind of give me some business advice in the voiceover industry that, yes, this is what you should expect. This is what a career looks like. Yes, this is a real job that people do, because I didn't really believe it when I started. Oh. So yeah, it was just about being kind of like strategic about it and understanding, when the numbers worked out.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm also at the same point where I'm looking at, my day job and then my, what I'm doing with my podcast and my content creation, and I'm just trying to find a level of parity where it's like, right, this is doing so well that I can just jump fully into this. I want to pursue my passion. So it's inspiring. Your story is definitely inspiring, and I really, really enjoy what you're
good luck
here. So what is the inspiration for you going into voice acting? Like, how did you get started? What was your inspiration? what was that point of origin for you to go in and decide that this is something that you want to pursue?
My origin story goes
Mhm.
that I was working in the reserves after I left active duty Air Force. I was working at the government, and then on the weekends occasionally I would work as a reservist still as an officer in the Air Force. And as it happens, sometimes as a reservist, you'll work weekends and no one else will be there. So the office was completely empty. And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about just whatever. And I said, you know what I've always wanted to try? Voiceover. And he's like, okay, my company used to hire from this website for a bunch of corporate stuff. It's not games and animation like you're talking about, which is what I had in mind. He's like, well, why don't you check it out? So I had some previous recording experience as a hobbyist musician. Wow. I was writing music for Overclocked Remix at the time. And I actually ended up I'm still on staff there with them. So I knew how to record. I knew how to make it sound good, and ended up booking the first thing I auditioned for. And it just snowballed from there. It was just like I would come home every day and I would audition for everything I could possibly find. And whatever stuck. And eventually sort of intuited my way through the career as to like what people wanted, what would book, what wouldn't book, what sort of specs would fit my voice, what wouldn't. And then just kind of went from there. And then, like I said, about 16 months after, I quit my job completely and decided like, well, it's time to go after what I really wanted, which was games, cartoons, anime. And so we moved out here about 4 years ago now.
Wow, man, that's an amazing story like that.
Yeah, it's a wild story. It's been a wild one.
But it's been a fun one nonetheless. I mean, that's very inspiring that you're able to, you maintain, your daytime career and you're able to transition into something that you have a passion for. So that is truly inspiring. No. So, with all that being said, I got to ask you the question, and it's how do you feel about the fact that Claude and the Golden Deer as a whole, like that's considered one of, if not the most popular, protagonist and group or house rather to go under in Fire Emblem Three Houses? Like, how does that feel?
It's funny. Everyone I feel like Claude is the most popular, but it's sort of like a confirmation bias, right? Like all my fans are they're not gonna talk to me about the Blue Lions and the Black Eagles, but like I guess like all the data that's been collected really puts Claude at number 2. In Japan, Dimitri was number 1.
Oh, wow.
And then for a long time in the U.S., Edelgard was the most picked house. But it's weird. There's no like official numbers have been collected or anything, but that's fine. Whatever. I'm not hurt about it. It's awesome. The fan reaction has been amazing. I didn't anticipate how strong of a reaction the fans would have to Fire Emblem and specifically to Claude. We've been having such a great time. The community has been. I was a little nervous about entering into that large of a fandom in that large of a capacity, just because a lot of my other actor friends, they do seem overwhelmed a lot with like the amount of attention and responses they get from fans. But so far, 99% of the interactions I've had have been wholesome and pure and totally, it's just been fun. We're out here to have fun. It's a video game. There really hasn't been hardly anything inappropriate or weird. So it's been great. I'm very happy to be interacting with fans all the time. It's great.
I mean, I never would have really thought of Edelgard as like number 1. I mean, just literally just because, and it also could go into what you're saying about with the confirmation bias, but it's the fact that I'm just seeing so many people go with the Golden Deer and with Claude and like avatars popping up, artwork. It just seems like he is the number 1 character. But you're right, definitely.
Yeah. People like him. He's really relatable. He has a very relevant story. His background is very relevant. People are interested in what a character with his ideals and his experience can do in an environment as volatile and often dark as the Fire Emblem Three Houses world. So yeah, he resonates really well with a lot of people, and everybody likes a guy that tells jokes. It's like everybody likes a wise ass.
So with that being said, I have to ask you, like, how much of you is in Claude?
It felt pretty natural to me. I was I always say that the best performances for a lot of actors are characters that are some facet of their personality, and Claude is close to me in a lot of ways. In the way I don't take a lot of stuff seriously.
I'm the same way.
A lot of stuff just kind of rolls off. Always quick to joke about even things that maybe you shouldn't joke about. So it's
cool.
it's I didn't have too much trouble stepping into Claude's skin.
So I've noticed you've been streaming a lot of Fire Emblem 3 houses lately. Let's talk about, how did you get into streaming, and like, your channel's been blowing up. Is that something that you were looking to do for a while, or what are your thoughts on that?
So the Twitch stream thing was actually sort of a secondary idea that came way after voice acting. And it was just something that I thought, when you get cast in a game as a gamer, right, now I've lost that fresh experience. I'm not able to experience Fire Emblem 3 houses with a fresh set of eyes and ears that I would had I just picked up the game at the store. But like, I like all these games, so I wondered how I could sort of recoup that experience. And I basically, my Twitch channel is only games that I'm in. So it's relatively new. I've played through Just Cause 4, and I've played through Ace Combat 7, and I dabbled a little bit in Judgment, Yakuza Judgment, before Fire Emblem came out, and then I promised fans, like, once I hit 20K followers, I would drop Judgment and start Fire Emblem right away, and that happened very, very quickly. So I think I only streamed Judgment like 3 times before I swapped over to Fire Emblem. But yeah, this is just a way for me to get in touch with fans in a very relaxed environment. Cons and signings, they can be very hectic. A lot of stimulation, a lot going on. This is just a way for me to chill out, interact with fans, and sort of recoup some of the experience of the game that you lose by being a part of it. And so far, I've really, really enjoyed it. I loved my AC7 stream. All like the airplane nerds came on talking about, and it was cool just being, from the Air Force and all that stuff, and being able to talk shop with those folks. And Fire Emblem has been fantastic. There's been so many, I never imagined so many people would show up on the stream, but it's been great. I've been having a lot of fun hanging out. We do like goofy advice columns in the middle now. Like, it's just coming up with different sketches and finding ways to enjoy the game and enjoy each other and experience the story, awesome story that is Fire Emblem together.
So with that being said, what is your current schedule for streaming?
Right now for Fire Emblem, I am streaming Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific and Thursdays at 8 p.m. Pacific. I have a lot of fans in Europe who were upset that those times don't work for them. So I'm trying to like squeeze in. I did one morning stream last Monday, and I hope to do a couple of like weekend, like a Saturday morning kind of thing or a Sunday morning kind of thing for a couple of hours. I'm out of town for the next couple of weekends. So sometime in September, I hope to pick that up as well. But the times I've locked in have been Tuesdays at 4, Thursdays at 8 for about 2 hours each. Yeah, I can't do these like real streamers who are like, yeah, I streamed for 14 hours yesterday. I was like, man, I can't do one thing for 14 hours straight. I don't remember a time in my life. Like, the last time I played a game for that many hours straight, I think I was in high school. Maybe on a Sunday when I had nothing to do. I think I binged Final Fantasy IX for like 12 hours. And that's the last time I just can't. I have 2 kids and a wife, and they'd kill me.
And that's one of the things too, is like, I've noticed as I've gotten older, like, my time is such a valuable commodity. When you're trying to juggle work, family, you just don't have the time to dedicate to stuff as you normally would have otherwise.
I mean, I would do it for like a charity thing, but like, certainly dudes who do it for 12 hours a day, I can't. I don't get it. Good for them. I'm happy we live in such an incredible world where you can do that. You could just play video games and have a great time for 12 hours a day, and that's your job. That's awesome.
But speaking of that, I mean, you're in Judgment, man. How did it feel being part of the second ever English localization, in the sense of English voice acting for a Yakuza title? Like, what was your experience with that?
Judgment's cool. It's a neat game. It's funny. So this story I've told a couple of times. The studio that booked me on Judgment has now 3 times in the middle of me playing a game booked me for that same franchise. So like, they
Mm-hmm.
I was playing Trails of Cold Steel, the first one, and got an email while I was in the middle of playing it that I had booked the game. And I was like, well, but I'm playing the game. And they're like, yeah, we're porting it over to PC and we need some additional voices. This was right when I got to LA, so I had no clout yet at all. But it was funny. I had just experienced my first Yakuza game, Zero. I had just played Zero, and literally was in the middle of the game, and they're like, hey, you booked one of the side characters in Judgment. And I was like, oh, okay, that's fun. So it was great. I got to go in, and that localization team really knocked it out of the park. Like I was worried because the last time they had an English dub for Yakuza was a long time ago, and it did not the reception was not as positive. So I was like, oh, I wonder, oh boy. But people loved it, and the acting was great, the writing was great. The localization team was fantastic. So yeah, it was neat to be a part of it, and I love it. The series is great. How can you not love it?
Right. I mean, one of my friends actually is in the in Judgment, is Mark Whitten. He's a really good friend of mine, and
Mark's great.
Yeah. So it's really awesome that
it's beautiful.
Yeah, like the game is it's such an amazing game, graphically, story, atmosphere, everything about this game is just truly amazing. Completely wanting to be fully respectful of your time and winding down to the last couple questions. One of the things I want to ask you about is what is it like to work with all these video game companies and also the anime companies and various organizations that you've gotten a chance to work with? I just want to know, what is your take on it? How, has your experience been so far?
Companies seem to have personalities just like people. I think maybe it's like the company culture tends to draw in, like personality types. So every company has its own personality, but I can't say that any of them were bad. I mean, it's just, it's interesting to kind of reach into, like you're peeking behind the curtain, especially as a gamer myself and a fan of games. It's like you walk into a room full of Nintendo people for the first time and you're like, oh, they're just people. They're just people who are like, this is what they like to do. And this is totally normal. And then you meet a voice acting idol and you're like, oh, he's just a person. We're all just people trying to do what we love to do. So that's kind of what it boils down to. But yeah, every company does seem to have its own personality, and that it shines through in the way they conduct their business, but also in the way that their games come out.
So, moving away from, voice acting and, stuff you do for work, and I just want to ask you, what are some of the things that you like to do outside of work? There's some things that the fans may not be aware of, things that you personally enjoy.
I'm a parkour enthusiast. That's my workout of choice. So if I can climb it or swing from it or flip off of it, I like it.
Do you are you into
that's a lot of fun.
TRX?
Say what?
The bands. Yes, yeah.
The bands? They're okay. I don't know that. Yeah, they're all right. They're fun if to change things up. I'm a musician, hobbyist musician, so I play a variety of instruments at a very mediocre level. That's just something I enjoy doing. And yeah, that's about it. I like hiking. I like being out in nature when I can, especially living in the urban jungle that is Los Angeles. It's nice to get outside and take a breath of fresh air every once in a while. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you ever come out here to Hawaii, man, you should definitely go do some of the hikes out here. I mean, we got a bunch.
We were out there in 2012 or 2013, and gosh, we loved it.
Wow. Did you get to do any hiking while you were out here, like Cocoa Head or Diamond Head or anything like that?
We did Big Island, Oahu, and Kauai.
Oh, wow. You got to go to those islands.
Yeah.
Cool. What'd you get to do, or what are some of the things you got to see and experience while you were there? Did you get to do any?
Yeah, we did. I loved the we did a couple of volcano hikes on Big Island. That was super cool. And we did 1 or 2 hikes on Kauai. I got sick in the middle of the trip. My wife did the 11-mile monster hike. And she really liked that. But yeah, I did some diving. That was great.
But with that being said, kind of mandatory, I got to ask this question. What are some projects that you have in the works that you are currently allowed to share?
Almost always, the answer to this question is nothing. Because NDAs are like video game companies do not like you to talk about anything ever. However, Trails of Cold Steel 3 is coming out, I think, this October, and I'm one of the members of Class 7.
Nice.
I play Kurt Vander. So that's an exciting project. I love the Trails of Cold Steel games. They're excellently done. I'm excited for that to come out. So that's probably the only project that I'm okay to talk about, which is Trails of Cold Steel.
Have there been any opportunities for you to like work with any other voice actors? Or was it like individual booths for you guys?
You know, when you say work with, almost never. Like I'm almost never in the booth with anybody. It's always individual, unless it's a ensemble cast animation thing. Like I'm in a Nickelodeon show right now called Lego City Adventures. And I play Duke Detain, who's one of the main characters. So I get to be in the booth all the time with a bunch of different animation actors, and that is a ton of fun. Or if you're doing motion capture, so you put on the big suit and with the light bulb looking things and stuff like that. Those are really the only times you get to interact with other actors. And so I think to our detriment. That's just the way the industry works. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying that it sucks. So a lot of times when projects wrap, I did this for Fate Apocrypha. I was Achilles in Fate Apocrypha, and I was the big bad in the Hunter x Hunter movie, The Phantom Rouge. And so after each of those projects, a lot of times like I'll reach out to the cast and be like, guys, just come over and let's hang out. And so like we screened Fate Apocrypha and we screened the movie, and we just kind of had like a good time, got to know each other, because we so rarely get to do that, especially like if the studio doesn't throw a cast party or anything like that. You know, it's just we go into the void and never see each other. So I've been trying to do a lot more like that.
So, wrapping up with the last question I wanted to ask you, is there, what advice would you give to the audience here or any of your fans that are interested in getting into, voice acting or acting as a career?
So on my YouTube channel, I actually have like a 15 episode series on like how to get into voice acting. So youtube.com/Joe Zieja, it should be pretty easy to find on there. And those that's very much my path, like how I did it, with some additional ideas thrown inside. Look up D. Bradley Baker's website, iwanttobeavoiceactor.com. All those words spelled out normally. D. Bradley Baker is an exceptional animation actor who does some of the best monsters and sound effects ever. I guarantee you've heard him. You just may not know him. His website's great. And then Tara Platt and Yuri Lowenthal wrote a book called, I really can't remember that. Someone asked me this earlier today, but it's the only, is it voiceover voice actor? I think that's what it is. But their book, those are all great resources to kind of get involved. And there are so many different entry points to voice acting. Some people got in through radio. Some people got in through theater. Some people stumbled on it in the middle of a weekend in the Air Force Reserves, so there's no one way to get into it. The important thing is that you find a way that fits you and just start doing it as much as you possibly can, over and over and over again, and don't give up.
Awesome. So is there anything you want to leave the audience with before we go?
I don't think so. If you're going to play Fire Emblem 3 Houses, you better be picking Golden Deer.
Awesome. So I got one last question for you if you have time for it.
Shoot.
Did you have fun?
Hell yeah, I had fun.
Awesome. All right, and so with that being said, people, you'll be able to catch this episode of the Kasanova Podcast available on youtube.com/Mekel Kasanova. You'll also be able to catch it on all podcasting outlets, so be that Google Play Music, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and so much more. So with that being said, myself and Joe, we are signing out. We will catch you guys on the next one. Hey, did you enjoy this episode of the Kasanova Podcast? Well, I'm sure you did. And since you did, and you're wondering where else you can find it on every podcasting outlet. Yes, that includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Launchpad DM by Podcast One, and so much more. And the only thing I ask of you is if you truly enjoyed it, even if you didn't enjoy it, please leave a rating and tell us what you thought of it, what you like, what you didn't like, and everything in between. And also, if you're looking for video formats of this podcast and many more, you'll be able to find them on youtube.com/McCloud as well as on twitch.tv/McCloud and new episodes every single Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, with that being said, this is Mekel Casanova, Hawaii's favorite YouTuber. I am signing out. You guys have a great one.